Okay, well, I'm so happy for you to join us today. I think just to set the tone for everyone, Jen and I have been internet slash Twitter friends for a good amount of time now.
I would say so.
Yeah. I think we worked with Bajir at Curse maybe 8 years ago, 9 years
Oh
ago.
my gosh. Probably.
I think I just remember this very distinct memory of you running around with meal prepped food at BlizzCon. Does that
Oh
sound
my
like your
gosh.
life?
Yeah. It's like every other year, it was like his bodybuilding stuff. So it was like, yes. It was just bringing him his chicken and rice and broccoli or whatever it was at the time.
You're the MVP. I will say that. Jen and I got to talking, I would say casually a little bit more in the last few years when I found out that she was writing her book and I've had a work in progress book for a long time. How long did it take you to finally finish your book from when you started really putting your mind to paper?
The first draft was probably done in, I would say 6 weeks total. And
Six
then
weeks?
yeah, yeah. I just like I mean, but draft, like first draft just got it out and then like going through edits and that kind of stuff. It took about 10 months like
Hmm.
total
Yeah.
for first book to actually look like a first book. So,
Wow. I'm super impressed. What year was that?
2022 is when like the story really hit me. It was like July, middle of summer. Jackson and I were out on a walk and I was kind of like just had this question where I was asking him, like, if you could kind of like create your own world, what would that look like? Because we're all, I mean, we are such nerds. I mean, coming from the gaming realm, obviously, it's like, what kind of realm or what kind of world would you create? And he was just kind of like, well, I don't know. Like, we had talked so much about, like the fantasy side, the sci-fi side, things like that. And I had told him that like there's like a character that came to me and
Hmm.
Wren had popped into my head, but I hadn't really built the world around her, but she was just there. Like she was just in my
Hmm.
head and I knew that something was going to happen with her. And so we were just kind of thinking about like what would that world look like for her? And like she was a mage. And it just kind of went from there. Like during our walks, I would like develop the world. And I remember
Ah.
like specifically when Tyrion popped in, I was like, she has like a love interest and it's Tyrion and he's a necromancer. And, it's just like, it was just kind of fun. And then the world kind of like built around them, as
Amazing.
yeah. So,
That's so interesting. So it
but
really
yeah,
did start with Ren, and then the world just unfolded. That's the true
yeah,
main character syndrome, right? The world just unfolds around the person.
it really did. Yeah. It was just kind of one of those moments where it's like she just was there. She wasn't like loud and telling me, you have to write my story, but it was just like I think I have to write this story. Like,
So
but yeah, that's how it kind of came to be.
walking was a huge part of unlocking this idea. Where did you walk? Did you go hiking? What was sort of the physical environment? What did that look like?
Yeah. The nice thing where we live in our neighborhood is like they kind of have like nice parkland area. Um, a little more like manicured looking, but if you just go out of our neighborhood, it's like really kind of rural, like farmland, kind of spacious looking and that kind of stuff. And I don't know if it was just that or what, but it was definitely once we would get out into that kind of more farmland looking area is where like I could really kind of open up and think a little bit better. That's where, especially when that moment, that question hit
Mm.
was actually like, there's the corner. Like and every time we go to that corner, like I know that corner is like where I asked him that question. Like it's just right there. That's
That's so
where the
cool.
Shadows of Ren started.
That's amazing. So you mentioned she's a mage. So diving into a little bit of that, and you also said you're a nerd. Tell us about
Yes.
some of your interests and maybe some of your hobbies that inspired this book too.
Yeah. So I think growing up, always a nerd. My family, we were always into fantasy movies. Like my favorite movie growing up was Neverending Story. And so I
Mm.
would watch that apparently, according to my mom, I would just watch it, rewind it, watch it, rewind it, watch it, rewind it. And she was just like, could not deal with it. But
And back
so
then it was on VHS, right? Where you
yeah,
had to like crank it and then you had to go through it. So you almost got to watch it like in reverse super speed while you were
oh yeah.
rewinding it.
And then dealing with, like, the heartbreak every time and being, like, a little three-year-old just crying. Just growing up in my family, we always had this love for, like, the fantasy genre, I guess,
Hmm.
and gaming and that kind of stuff. We grew up on starting with Warcraft and, a lot of Blizzard games, and then meeting Jackson, playing World of Warcraft and that kind of stuff, kind of getting into more of the content creation
Hmm.
and diving deep more into gaming in general, I think just really helped with that. And I've always been an imaginative person, so just creating stories in my mind, but never really finding the outlet for it, but just keeping them in there. And it just hit me one day, like I should write them out, just see what comes.
When it comes to who you play in video games, do you play, mages like Wren, or how did you pick mage for Wren?
Yeah, I mean, she was a definite mage. My first character was actually a mage. She was undead though. I tend to go with like the scaries. So maybe Tyrion being a necromancer, kind of like
Mm.
that mix, maybe that's why it works so well. Yeah, I always do like caster classes. I have an affinity for them. They're pretty easy to like stand back and cast. And then kind of looking at, I think, just the fantasy genre and what works and, delving into you want to have a world that is yours, but you also want to have one that people understand or can grab a concept of.
Mm-hmm.
And so knowing what I guess like magical classes and schools could go together, what could work together and things like that is where I kind of like expanded my world with
Mm.
what I enjoyed. So I thought it would be really interesting to have witches and warlocks as separate classes because a
Right.
lot of people just have it as like a gender definition. Um,
Mm.
whereas when in Warcraft, it's not, it's like an actual class definition of
Yep.
magic capabilities. And so being able to have witches have their own special ability, have them be their own separate magic school was kind of cool to do. Necromancy actually and mage having like a depth where they actually tie in somewhat symbiotically with their own magic and that kind of thing and having there be a defined difference between them as well was kind of fun too
Yes.
have that be like, nope, separate.
I really love how you wrote necromancers in your book too. I think necros can get such a bad rep of being sort of like the darker evil side, but I think
Yeah.
you brought such a really cool component of just like the concept of life and like the role of a death doula too. So for those that have never heard of the Shadows of Wren, give us sort of your quick about the book.
Well, it is centers around Wren, who holds an ancient shadow magic that dates back to long forgotten history, some original magic that begins to possibly tear at the fabric of their world. And as she's figuring out what's happening to their world, their libraries start to burn and their villages and stuff come under attack. And along her investigations and along the way of learning about what's going on, she meets Tyrion, who is a necromancer, and their kind is not widely trusted
Hmm.
due to the fact that necromancy does kind of walk that line of light and dark magic. However, during their experiences of searching for who's doing these burnings and destroying their towns and that kind of stuff, they learn that they both hold the same ancient shadow magic. And so,
Mm.
yeah, they go on this journey to find out not only who is behind this, but what more might be out there for them.
Yes. And I know that stakes end up getting higher and higher and higher by the end of the first book. When it comes to maybe the quote that really sticks out to you in your book, do you have a favorite?
So I feel like The one that I picked out is actually so lighthearted. So she found him at the inn. She's doing like her first on her own journey.
Mm-hmm.
She found him at the inn and she's like, okay, I'm going to confront him and figure out what's going on. And she does it and she freezes and she's like so embarrassed, but she gets over it. So they're going on an adventure together to the town of the witches. There's a moment I think that just shows Wren's humanity more than
Mm.
anything. We walk side by side out of the village gates and toward the northern road. It would be hard to keep clean from the muddy roads that were ahead, but I tested for firm patches of dirt, avoiding the puddles of softer looking spots. It was an intricate dance of steps and small leaps from one part to the other, and within a couple of minutes, Tyrion was laughing at my attempts at avoiding the mud. You look like a cat, he said, the earlier tension having dissipated. I don't want to get too messy, I said to him as I maneuvered around another area, stepping into the grass and back into the road. Oh, you'll get messy. You'll barely make it into town leaping around like that before your legs give out. I stuck out my tongue at him and continued the large steps and half leaps. It wasn't more than a few exaggerated movements later that I was deceived by a chosen spot. I gritted my teeth at the squelching of the mud as my boots sunk into the sludge. And I think there were these moments where, with Wren, that she is a character that has like a lot of anxiety and self doubt in the things that she does. But I wanted to show these moments with her where she has like these very human moments with him, these moments that she didn't realize that she could express with him and it was okay.
Oh.
That, you know, and even in the moments there, she didn't like react like that and she didn't notice it and stuff. But yeah, it was just cute things.
It's
Favorite
super
moments
cute.
like that.
It's those
Yeah.
little things, I think, that also make the world and the relationships and connections feel so much more real. That passage reminds me of, you know, when you're just starting to like cross that threshold with someone where it's becoming a little bit more and you're a little bit cautious about how you show up and like there's like a raw sort of embarrassment there too, I think, where you're like, she's like, she doesn't want to, and then everyone knows that squelchy, like, everything that I've been avoiding. You
Like
step
I
deep
did it.
into it.
No. Yeah.
So I love that you picked that small connection moment too, because I think that really does help you feel where Wren is at, the safety, and just the realness of, it's not just this epic fantasy story tale that you're telling here. It's a person you've made really real in this world with even the little moments as well. Were there any themes or general things that you were like, I know that I want to write this into Wren's story, that you kind of decided on in the beginning, or did it sort of come to you over time?
Well, one small one was the messenger cats for sure. Like they were
Oh, I loved them.
they were one thing that I had to write in there somehow because I knew there had to be some kind of like mail delivery system and obviously cats had to be involved some way. And so I think for her, I think as somebody who suffers from like mental health issues, I think trying to write somebody in a way that feels real too. I think everybody writes mental health in the way that they experience it, and that's great and that's good. But I wanted to try to write it in a way that I've experienced anxiety and depression and self-doubt and things like that, where there are moments where you might feel brave and there are moments where you can push it aside, but there are those really dark moments that you have where you're just like, it all falls apart, you know, and you might look fine on the outside, but inside you're just like, it sucks. It sucks, you know? So hopefully that conveyed a little bit with her. Hopefully people could see that with her.
I know they did. Actually, I did see in our book club, there was a lot of people saying, I love how you wrote anxiety and it felt real. And it was something that I did identify with. So I did actually see quite a few people share that sort of kindred experience. And it feels like people felt that good representation as well.
That's great. It's just a way that I think was like cathartic for me, is, you know, just to help people out there too, is like just another real way of expressing it and hopefully supporting others with it.
Looking at chat, it looks like messenger cats were one of the best parts that they all felt very strongly about. Was there a specific cat breed or just image? Was it your Samson, or how did
Oh
you
my gosh.
imagine them?
I got my son. It was supposed to be a Christmas gift for him, but it ended up being a Christmas gift for myself. But it was like the Playmobil, like Novelmore Castle.
Hmm.
It came with like this wolf.
Okay.
And as you can tell, he's got like a little like scroll
Yeah.
on him. I hadn't really thought about it. And then as I was writing the book and decided I want cats to be like the carrier of messages on like harnesses. And I was trying to figure out like how do they do it? Like is it like an actual envelope? Like what is it and stuff? And he brought this up and I was just like, oh my gosh, this is it. This is what we're gonna do. And so that was my inspiration for the little scrolls
That's really cool.
tied around them on a harness and it was cats and different breeds. New is definitely a cat that is much like my husband's favorite cat, Bagheera. So
What does Bagheera look like?
Bagheera is a kind of blue-gray tuxedo cat. So
Ooh.
he's a big boy, big love boy, and he's just, Newt gets to live like the best retired life ever. So
I will say, I do know that this is a fictional story because getting cats to do anything you want is
oh
totally
yes,
fantasy world oriented. So,
I know. And that's like I was like, okay, how can we make this believable? It's like they're food driven. So
yes.
they had to have clay pots of treats. And so it was like that is the only way these cats are going to go do what they need to do is because they will get treats.
Yes. That makes a lot of
So
sense.
the idea of everybody having these clay pots with treats next to their doors was just like the best like image in my mind of like that's how you get your mail. Like
Ah, what a cool world. We'll move on to some of our pre-planted questions. So if you all aren't aware, again, this was part of our book club for April, and anyone that read along with us had the opportunity to pre-plant questions to ask Jen with us live. So we're going to jump into those. The first is very timely with the cover picture. What was your inspiration for the cover art? We're all obsessed with it.
oh my gosh. I worked with an absolutely talented cover artist. I found her and I will not let go of her ever. But her name is Rena, and the magnolia is kind of reminiscent of Wren, the citrus. It's kind of reminiscent of Tyrion. And
Mm.
I tried to really incorporate a lot of smells, senses, textures, touch, everything like that. And so Wren has like her signature scent is kind of like magnolia and vanilla.
Ooh.
And Tyrion is bergamot and ginger. And so we have a bit of citrus and magnolia on the cover to kind of represent them with the shadows. And the starlight, as you can see, is a bit of Wren as well, because this
Hmm.
is her kind of her introduction, her beginning of her story. And she gets a really cool blade that
Ooh.
drips starlight. So
Very
very
thoughtful.
exciting.
Question from the chat we have, was working with your artist very hands off, or did you have a very clear image on the output?
Oh, yeah. She was very open to hearing our ideas and what I wanted, but I also am very open to the artist's creativity.
Right.
I love to work together with people. I love to tell them the concept of the book. I actually let her read the book beforehand.
Ah.
And so when we talked about it and we talked about a few of the different things, we talked about, you'll know in the second book, Kelly has seen it, but we talked about adding like weapons or things like that,
Mm-hmm.
or like an evolution with the series. And she worked with the design. She sent me a few different mock-ups and she was great. She's amazing. She is just absolutely just so good. And the interior work, especially with the print, I don't know if I can show you guys, but like these like stunning like interior
Yes.
pages and just I mean, it's just beautiful what she
Yes.
does. So
I love just the typography and the font and how it works with the art too. It's so,
yeah.
love it. Next question we have for you was throughout the whole book, What was your favorite part to write?
So it was my favorite, but my hardest part because it was
Mm.
the most emotional was probably I don't want to like do the spoilers, but it was the battle scene, one of the battle scenes where we lose somebody dear to us. Um,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
where Wren loses somebody very dear to her because it was a moment where we were able to see a part of Wren and her shadow magic that really unlocks part of the story as things progress with the kind of shadow magic
Yep.
that she holds and where it goes. It was such like an emotional thing. I remember writing it and I was sobbing and like I was listening to Hailung and it was like one of their battle chant songs, like where this
Mm.
guy is telling a story and it's like in Germanic, old Germanic, I think. And so I
Okay.
couldn't understand what he was saying. But the screaming and the pain that he was feeling through it,
Mm.
and it was just everything came together as I was um, writing these moments, and it just like, oh, I remember Jackson came up, and I was just like, it's done. Like I wrote it, and I was just like, sorry. So I would say it was like the best in terms of Ren's evolution, like that was like the turning point of her like kind of coming into
Right.
like this is who I am now. This is like
Right.
there's no going back for Ren. She can't just be like her little old mage anymore
Yep.
and just like working on her like shadow magic in the basement anymore. She's changed forever. She lost something dear to her and it kind of changed the trajectory of what was going on in her life then for a while too.
And without spoiling too much, the person or thing that Ren loses, there was conflict with them. They weren't on perfect terms necessarily. And there's definitely, you can feel the loss, the replay of regret, especially throughout the first part of the book of maybe, was I proud of all of my interactions with them? Knowing
Yeah.
that that was the end too. So I definitely felt so much emotion in that too. And how you wrote that relationship and sort of that pinnacle was definitely where you're like, whoa, the stakes are just like boop, 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 keeps going up and up and
Yeah.
up. Will we get to see more Wren and Tyron?
Yes, we do for sure. There is a second book that will be actually releasing June 4th.
June
So,
4th. That is
yes,
very, very soon.
I know. So soon. So, we have the audiobook was just sent to me. So, I have all that going up. I'm just waiting for my formatted pages to go up for that. And then we'll have pre orders going. So,
Yes.
yeah, it's
Amazing.
gonna be so good. I feel like I grew so much with my writing, and I think that's what is so amazing is this was my first finished novel I ever wrote with The Shadows of Wren, and then writing the second one was so interesting to
Yes.
like grow so much more in understanding character development, understanding their connections, understanding just the art of storytelling
Yes.
even now, like drafting the third, it's even more intricate that like I'm learning things,
So there's a
and that kind of
third.
stuff. So that yes,
Oh,
but
okay. Amazing. Okay. We have a really great question from the chat I want to throw at you, which was if we were to ever make The Shadows of Wren into a movie, who would you cast as Wren and Tyrion?
so here's the thing is I don't know if I would actually do a live action movie. I
Okay.
almost would want it to be an animated movie,
Mm.
like the Dragon Prince or something
Oh, I
style,
love The
or
Dragon Prince.
you
We're calling
know.
up Netflix, basically, is what we're doing.
Yes, if Netflix would love to animate my book, please.
Well, I know that you had one of the characters was kind of more of like a Scottish accent from the audiobook. Do you have accents that
Yeah.
you prefer for your
Yes.
characters?
Vigo has always been a bit of a Scottish accent to me. His history is that he was adopted. So I feel like with his family lineage, they could have come from other parts of the continent and that kind of stuff. Agatha has more of a Persian style of accent.
Hmm. Do you associate your accents with also the same places too, or are there any like real life world places that you believe are your world and your own version of it?
I guess I kind of rely on like obviously with for example, Agatha, like she has very Middle Eastern
Okay.
looking features and that kind of stuff. And she's very beautiful, very olive tone skin, darker features. As for her background history and that kind of stuff, I don't know if I would say it's more like Egyptian style. Like, I don't know if I would, like what
Right.
I would say with that. The way that I view like our people, like my people and stuff, is it is definitely a melting pot of
Mm-hmm.
races, different people, different communities, and they've all come from different parts of the world and that kind of stuff. And they've all gathered basically onto Caldum
Got it.
right now. So, and that's Wren's world is just Caldum, but there are other parts to the world that they have yet to explore.
So when it comes to Caldum, do you imagine like Scottish Highlands or Norway, or is there like a special area that you've done a bunch of research to help inform that?
Oh, I mean, I guess I would say it's a little bit like the UK.
Okay.
I would say with nothing too overly snowy. It's pretty temperate. We do have the high northern Sierras, so they do get a little bit of snow, but nothing too cold. I don't like the cold.
I'm a freeze baby, so I
Yeah.
definitely can't do the cold. If we were to complete the blanks here of if you're someone who loves X, Y, and Z and enjoys blank genre and these sort of like plot points, how would you describe that for your book, The Shadows of
Right.
Wren?
Okay, if you like epic, dark, cozy
Yep.
fantasy book,
Yes. We'll call it fantasy genre.
that's a mix of like sorcery of thorns and the Witcher,
Okay.
then you'll like this. It
Yes.
is, yeah, definitely. We kind of do that closed door, not super spicy. We don't have a lot of the smuttiness,
Yes.
and that is my book.
Love it. Let's talk a little bit more about your experience becoming an author, the process of self publishing. I know that there's so much that goes into this, everything from editing to cover art to map making to hiring a voice actor, starting maybe from the beginning of when you said, I finally have my done and dirty drafts. I'm ready to move on. Walk us through sort of those stages you went through.
Yeah. So the first thing I did is I considered what I wanted to do, and that was, do I want to self-publish or do I want to look at traditionally publish?
Hmm.
And weighing those options, and I wanted to see what it was like on both sides. So I researched how you go about self-publishing, and I did basically test runs of querying agents to see what that was like.
Mm.
I didn't feel super confident with my manuscript. I didn't think it was going to sell for sure, but I went ahead and I queried agents, and I actually set up an interview with an agent just to kind of see what that process was like and
Right.
what it would be like if an agent picked it up, and then what the publishing process would be like and
Hmm.
submission and that kind of stuff. For me and for this series, I would want to have more control and freedom with this series than what traditionally publishing would probably
Hmm.
have to offer.
Hmm.
On top of the fact that it was my first book, right?
Yes.
Like my first published book, I would be spending a long time querying and out on submission, like probably years. I mean, it can take a very, very,
Querying to
very long
publish
time.
is like minimum 2 to 3 years just
Yeah.
to live in the
Yeah.
world.
Oh yeah. And I was really proud. Like I wrote a book. Like it's like that
Yes.
funny joke I see all the time where it's like, hey guys, I wrote something, if you just want to read it. And they're just like, oh my gosh, so cute. Like, what'd you write? No, I wrote a novel, and it's like, what? It's like thinking it's just like a cute little paper or something. No, it's like a freaking book. For me, it was like, okay, so let's experience the self-publishing side. So
Yep.
it was choosing, do you want to go the Amazon only route or do you look at
Mm.
going wide? Amazon only, again, very easy. It's an easy process,
Okay.
but it is pretty much strictly Amazon distribution
Mm.
only, which can be limiting, but it's easy. It's fine. Or you can do, draft to digital, Ingram Spark. There's a ton of companies out
Okay.
there that can help you go wide, and they get you into libraries, they get you
Oh,
into Barnes and Noble online. There's all different companies. And so I chose to go wide, wanted to go through Ingram Spark to see how that
Okay.
goes. And then it was the process of finding my cover artist, finding an editor, finding all of the other things that kind of go into it. So the editor would be the big thing for
Right.
me because of first time author. I would need to kind of make sure that my story structure, that what I was trying to say was right,
Mm.
that I wasn't redundant with a lot of my writing, which pretty bad. So um, I found her through Readsy.
Okay.
That's a really good website to kind of start. They have wonderful help on that site. I worked with Erin, her name is,
Mm.
and she had me cut about 30,000 words. And
Really?
yeah, and we restructured everything and really worked with it. Don't be afraid of editors. They really make your book the best that it is.
Mm.
And they're not mean. They're not as mean as people think they are. And they don't change your book. They just help you with it.
Yes, I think editing can trigger that like teacher grading your paper
Yeah.
trauma that maybe some of us have from growing up. And I know that there's a lot of different types of editors. I've heard of like line editing versus development
Yeah.
editor. What did you go with, or all the
So
above?
I did developmental editing for this book, and I definitely should have done developmental and copy edits
Okay.
for it. The developmental edits are basically looking at the story as a whole and making sure that the story structure is fine, making sure that we flow correctly, making sure that we reach all of our plot points and everything like that. Copy edits is looking through and making sure that we are correctly using
Hmm.
all of our wordage correctly, making sure that we are not being too redundant on phrases and things like that. If we're doing specific things too much repeatedly, things like that. I think for me, it was just a couple little proofreading issues and things like that that I definitely found later that I was like, wow, good job, Jen. That I wish I could have caught later. Second time around, second book, editors are worth their weight in gold.
Hmm.
Like
Hmm.
they can be costly, but especially if you're really trying to get your book out there and get people to read it and enjoy it, people
Hmm.
are so nitpicky about if something is misspelled or a structure thing is like
Hmm.
off or something, or somebody says so and so laughed too many times. It's like, that is the worst thing ever. And I'm giving you 1 star. It's just like, it is the weirdest thing. I will say, work within your budget, because if you can write and publish something, outweighs anything. Cover artist, find one that works for you.
Yes.
And she does the formatting and stuff for my book
Oh, great.
too.
Oh,
Then you upload
nice.
it, you set your release date, and it like magically populates everywhere.
And they handle the printing too?
Yeah, they handle printing.
Hmm.
And so they drop ship basically. And then people pre order it, gets put on Amazon and everything.
It is kind of
And
magical.
then, yeah, it is. But
Magical
it's
print
awesome.
fairies.
Yeah. And then we have the release date. You can do early copies, just to make sure
Hmm.
everything looks good.
That's a great question. Did you do ARC readers?
I did. I did a couple ARC readers. I was so new to it, so I didn't really put like a lot of stipulations in place initially. I was just like, "Hey, if you want to read my book early and leave a review, that would be great." And so I would just send it out. I think I only sent out about like 15,
Okay.
and maybe 3 left a review. I found out what people do is like you have like a sign up sheet and they have to like fill out this information and they have to like
Mm.
agree to things, and then you send them this stuff and then they have to like do this stuff, and if they don't do it, then at least you know who they are. And
Yes. There's a
but
level of effort that they're putting in there that maybe it increases the likelihood of their legitimacy.
right, yeah, I guess you have like a little bit better interaction. You can email them to remind them, things like
Hmm.
that. You can do things like book tours if you're looking to do promotion,
Hmm.
especially if you're looking at doing it as like a side job for business stuff and advertising, taxes and tax purposes for any kind of expenditures and stuff like that. They will do social media posts for you and help kind of promote your book. And that's pretty fun to see your book on
Yeah.
like really pretty flatly displays and stuff. So
Ah, how amazing. And What a cool time to be an author just in history where you can self-publish and you could write something in 6 weeks, which is amazing in itself, Jen, and then get it edited, get your own cover art, and then have it live in the world, within a relatively small span of time.
Yeah.
I
I
think,
think the second
yeah.
book, it's been 9 months when I
Okay,
get it published. So 9 months
nice.
from finishing writing it to published.
That's still a
That'll
great
be
timeline.
the fastest time. Yeah.
I'm sure there's also a lot of decisions because you're not just building and making the world, you're also thinking about how do you want that to show up, from everything from your cover art to your voice actress to narrate it. It's probably a lot of
Yeah.
decisions.
That was a whole other thing is finding the voice actor or the voice actress and stuff. And you would go to Find Away Voices or
Okay.
ACX. I think ACX is probably one of the better ones. I went to Find Away Voices, but now that Spotify took over, they took off the narrator pages and stuff. But
Oh,
I had found my actress at least before then. So,
and I know not all, I think actually it's pretty rare to meet a debut author that also invests in audiobook for that V1. Why did you make that decision? Why was that important for you?
I think for me, it was if I was going to do the self-publishing route, I wanted to give it the best
Hmm.
shot that
Hmm.
I could. I was very proud of it. And
Yeah.
if I had the resources to do it, then I wanted to do what I could with it and give it a good shot, have people enjoy it. It's like, like I'm putting in the work, but it's almost like it's like I'm giving a gift to people. Like I
That's
know
so
it's like, yeah,
sweet.
you buy it and like, yeah, thanks, for buying my thing. But I wanted it to be like a gift for people too. Something that was worth it for them, worth the read, worth the time spent, the money spent, and that kind of thing. So
Stories just make the world go round, right? The core
yeah.
memories and how it either helps you identify or gives you a place to escape, even. How has your sort of family and friends rallied behind your author journey and experience?
My parents, like they have been so excited. I don't know if my dad has ever been so excited for something that I've done. He's been super excited about like our gaming stuff. Like he's always asked about like our gaming stuff, but like it's been so cute. Sometimes my mom will just say how my dad will be like talking to someone and just be like, "My daughter is writing a novel," or "My daughter like
How
published a book
cool.
or something." That just like hits me hard, you know?
Oh, that's
It's just
amazing.
really sweet. Yeah.
Because you said,
Yeah.
you were kind of a fantasy family growing up, right? They were
Yeah.
into the fantasy genre.
My mom and she'll read every draft that I basically send her. So
Wow.
she's a saint.
It's great to have the willing to read all of your micro edits.
I'm like, "What do you think about this, mom?" She's like, "Oh, I love it." I'm like, "Oh, okay." She loves everything I send her.
That's your first person to read it should love everything, and that's that just helps motivate you to keep you going. Well, I think as this is your debut novel, I'd love to hear, do you have any just general tips for new authors or people that may have not finished their first book yet?
Just finish the book, finish the draft. If anything that I've heard, I think what hit me most was, you always hear like, "Oh, don't edit as you go along. Don't do this, don't do this." Like, but just finish. Like, skip parts if you have to. Like, just
Mm.
finish the book. Like, there were times sometimes where I would just like put in a bracket and say like fight scene here or emotional dialogue here or something. If I just did not have it in me to like do something in that
Hmm.
moment, I'm the kind of person where I can't just like go and like skip parts of a book and write like specific scenes. I just have to start from start to finish. So I just have to skip parts sometimes and then just go
Mm.
back. So what I would do is like so it would just be these little chunks, like a battle scene, and then go to my next chapter
Okay.
and just write. Just finish even if it feels like it's the world's hottest garbage. Like just finish because you got the words out there and that's the important part because you can always make it better.
That's really great
So,
advice. I know we
yeah.
we were talking a little bit earlier. How do you know when you're done, or how do you know when you're done enough? Maybe is a better question.
Yeah, we were talking about that. You always want to feel like you could do more. What I would do is when I go through and I'm reading through my drafts, like after I've done my copy or my developmental edits, I've done my copy edits, I've done proofreading, and I'm reading through. And if I'm reading it and I'm like smiling at the things I've written, or, I'm feeling those like moments that like I'm proud of, that's when I know it's like,
Hmm.
it's good to get out there. If I can read through it seamlessly, know that we don't have a major issue. Everything looks good grammatically, that the story flows, and that if I'm reading it and I'm smiling at the work and I feel good about the things I wrote, then I can get it out there.
That's great. And I think it reminds yourself that you're your first reader at the end of the day. And so if you feel good about what you're writing, it's so much easier to then have that be felt through your work. And I also think when you love what you do, it also makes criticism a little bit easier because not all art is for everyone, but as long as you know it's for you, then
Yeah.
for me, that always becomes a little bit more palatable. I know that,
Yeah.
especially when I first started sharing snippets of my writing, I was just so insecure about it and just afraid of the criticism. And I think in unpacking that emotion a little bit more, I realized that I was not yet comfortable with developing my craft skill. And so, this amazing story that lived in my mind, I'm like, the transfer process onto the page, it just wasn't making it. And I'm like, oh, but this and this and this. And what I realized is it just comes in time, right? It
Hmm.
comes in time where very rarely will you ever get to direct download your brain onto paper and your intentions, but that can be the fun part too. And you also just don't solve that in the first draft, right? As you
Yeah.
said, you get it all out, that first draft, and then you go through and say, what was I trying to do with this, right?
Oh,
Or
totally.
you seek the criticism and you say, what did you get from this, right? And if they didn't get what you wanted or they got something else, it can help your gears turn a little bit to say, well, do I want to go that direction or do I want to actually, put in a couple barriers and steer people back onto this main quest?
A lot of times when you're looking at something, it's almost like cinematic in my head,
Yes.
or like it's like
Yes.
you see it, yeah, it's like a movie, and you're trying to describe the movie, and but you're the one person, and so you're just like, okay, how do I do like this big pan scene looking in, but like I'm just this one person, and you almost have to take that moment away
Right.
because it's no, like as beautiful as this scene is, I am just that one person. And
Mm,
so you have to describe what that is, but from that person's point of view. So it's almost like understanding the senses. And that, like, that's how I at least was trying to convey
right.
a way of like what the element was, what the scenery was and stuff was senses and feelings and touch and size and things like that. And it does. It is a learning process because I don't think I nailed it at all on some things, and other things I was like, oh, that was like kind of cool. But
Well, that actually it sparked a new question of how do you know which voice to pick, whether it's first person or third person? How did you make your decision for your book?
yeah, I think when I just started writing, I just wrote as Wren,
Okay.
and that's just it just came out as her. But I have grown such and I always write in past tense. I've been reading more in present tense, and it was very jarring at first when I started to read in present tense because it was just, like, odd. I've grown to like it and appreciate it. Third person has I've seen that that's become so I've seen how beneficial that's become because you can really especially when you have multiple points of view, that has become very helpful when trying to tell stories. I just love identifying with a character, and I think that brings, more emotional connection for me
Mm.
is, like, when you feel like you're that person.
Which is also amazing because I think that sometimes there's this conception that when you write in first person, you miss out on a lot of the intricacy of other characters' feelings. And I did not feel that way actually when it came to some of your characters and really getting into their heads and their reactions, but just truly experiencing that through Ren. It's kind of interesting being an author. You kind of get to play God in a really weird way. And
I know.
um, And it's really strange where you're like, I'm going to put you through like 4 hell and back loops. And I'm sorry, love you, but
It's like, I promise this will make you stronger, but just gonna make you jump you off the cliff.
yeah, what doesn't kill you will literally make you stronger here, but it doesn't mean it won't hurt for a while. So when it comes to your new book, I know you've talked about it a little bit today. Tell us about it.
So it's coming out. It's called The Shadows of the Kingdom. I think we kind of left ourselves off on a bit of a cliffhanger. I left it, book one could technically have been a standalone. It was, standalone slash possibly a cliffhanger. The Shadows of the Kingdom. So the Red Kingdom was kind of, we weren't sure what they were planning, but now we will find out. So book two kind of delves into what secrets they are getting into. And Wren and Tyrion, of course, have to put a stop to what they're doing. It's very epic. I would say if you take like Victoria, well, this is like my dream, but like, if you take like Victoria Aveyard's Realmbreaker,
Okay.
and The Witcher and kind of comp that, it's like more epic fantasy, Lord of the Rings-esque, like they
Cool.
have like true high stakes. We're getting pretty serious now versus just like, getting to know each other and that kind of stuff.
It almost
It's
feels like book
getting real.
one was like the prequel to all of these things that are going to be happening now in book two. And we heard
Yeah.
there's going to be a book three. So
It was, yeah, the meeting of I needed Wren and Tyrion to be together and be together quickly because of how important it is for what they go through.
okay.
And I know a lot of people love that slow burn game, and I love it too. But we had that insta love for a reason. Book two is going to be so good.
Really excited for your next book and also this third book, which was new to me actually before we spoke
Yeah,
today. Do you have other series ideas outside of the
I
Red and
do
Tyrion?
actually. So when we write book three, I'm gonna go to. I'm not gonna. I can't tell too much, but it will be more fairy tale esque, but still YA.
Okay.
But a fairy tale retelling. That one I'm like heavily plotting. Like I'm actually being super nerd about that one. And oh my gosh. Like I'm in love with this one already, but I might highly consider traditionally pursuing that
Okay.
one.
I heard, and maybe this is fake news, I heard that you can also get traditionally published after you've self published too.
So it is rare,
Okay.
but you can. If a company believes in your work and they like what you are publishing, they can swoop it up and say, we would like to take it over if you would let us. It has happened. It's not often, but yes, they can.
Well, when it comes to your second book, what in particular do you want readers to get excited about? You said stakes are raising a bit more. Is there anything
Oh my gosh,
else?
yeah. I could read if you would like me to.
Yes. If you want
Okay.
to, whatever you feel comfortable sharing.
Okay. So after defeating the evil behind the attacks on the southern lands of Caldum, Ren and Tyrion settle into their new life that begins to be calm, or so they thought. Amid questions surrounding the Red Kingdom's threat and the aftermath of Ronan's advance, Ren and Tyrion receive an ominous letter from a mysterious magic kind that has remained hidden, warning of the Red Kingdom's motives.
Mm.
Left with a threat that won't just be to the towns, but the world as they know it, Ren and Tyrion begin the journey to stop the Red Kingdom at all costs. Faced with conflicting beliefs about what they should do, their relationship is tested in more ways than they can imagine.
Mm.
I know. We delve a lot more into the original history,
Ooh, which I
just what
know some of the
happened.
folks in book club were so excited to hear more about the originals. So they're going to be really
Oh,
excited
yes,
to hear that book two has more about the
uh,
originals.
very much.
I'm curious, where do you want your viewers today or anyone else to best find you? What platforms do you prefer?
Oh, yeah. If you guys want to follow me, I'm at Warcraft Jen pretty much everywhere, but you will see me a lot on Instagram and sometimes I get on TikTok and Twitter, or I guess X now.
We don't still call it
But
Twitter. They
mostly,
call it Twitter.
I know it's still Twitter, mostly Instagram. That's where I'm most active right now because the Bookstagram people are nice.
And remember, June 4th, we're looking at a release date for book number
Yes.
two. Give Jen a follow on all of her socials. Check out her next book. And that's it for today.
Thank you, guys.
We'll say bye for now. Bye.
We'll see you guys.